The Syncretion of Polarization and Extremes, Part 25, Italy, A Past-Present Dicotomia, Transposing Emblem by Daniela Cannarella. The first time I really had to deal with huge contradictions was some years ago, when I decided the topic of my master's thesis in archaeology. Eventually, I chose to analyze the impact of Greek colonization on the indigenous communities of eastern Sicily, and the relations between Greeks and Sicily during the 8th and 7th century BC in the colonies of Naxos, Lentini, and Syracuse. It was an opportunity to reflect on an encounter/clash provoked by cultural and ethnic differences, a chance to reflect on the Sicily of the past and the Sicily of today. Sicily, as well as Italy, is a place full of contradictions, opposites, some so common that we may not notice them, but others so significant that we have to know how to manage them. In more or less 6 months, I read and studied many dissimilar theories, different perspectives, which I would never have thought so numerous and linked to each other. First, I understood that the method used for the archaeological identification of past cultures had led some British and American archaeologists to make the theme of identity at the center of their studies. One of the most prominent ones even declared that archaeology is fundamentally a discipline concerned with identity. I wondered how it was possible that most of the Italian archaeologists have long refused to deal with this topic and consider it strictly connected to historical studies. I soon realized that this issue often provoked not just debates, but a real confrontation within academic environments. Some Italian university teachers and researchers believe that archaeologists must do without the concept of identità as tool for analyzing phenomena or behavior, because they cannot have direct access to the ideas and perceptions of ancient peoples. While the other disciplines, the data are analyzed within their context, forcing archaeologists to recreate that context through the same objects, and it is inevitable that the modern debates can influence our ideas about ancient polarization in social identity. The question is, when can such a presumed group of people legitimately be assumed to have considered themselves to be distinct from other contemporary social groups of human beings? For the first time in my life, I realized that ancient polarization based on identity, us versus them, is still alive in universities and colleges, altered by distance and time, discussed in new language, in Italy, in Europe, and all over the world. This polarization influences our thoughts and our feelings about modern immigration and the ability to imagine a multicultural future based on societies in which equal respect for the various cultures is a habit, and policies promote the preservation of cultural diversity. For this reason, I chose to include the theme of identity in my research. Identity, a source of clashes or a resource to understand the past better, is the right way to cognize us, a key to understanding the present era. A large number of indigenous sites dating back to the Iron Age characterized eastern Sicily, the land of some of the oldest Greek colonization with poleis like Syracuse and Naxos. Different cultures, different languages, different ways of thinking were found in the same territory. In each context, I analyzed convergences and divergences between literary sources and material evidence to test the existence of hostility between the indigenous and the Hellenic component in the new settlements. According to the Greek literary tradition, Greek colonization involved the use of force against the people already settled, but the material data often do not confirm violent and traumatic events. The clashes between Greeks and Persians in the 5th century BC strongly influenced the historians who, more or less unconsciously, have often projected such negative experiences into the colonial past. I realized that just as the future is influenced by the past, so even the past thoughts and stories about people living 2 or 3 centuries ago had been altered by today's polarization in social identity, us versus them. The model of coexistence between Greeks and Siculi was too simplistic too. A theory that highlights the interactive process leading to the change of both the indigenous and the colonial culture might be the best way to explicate the perception that they had of themselves. A world where various identities were influenced by each other, where everything was ruptured but also meeting. The initial relationship with Siculi did not have to result in immediate conflict, and a model based on integrated economics may have frequently led to historical situations in which the maintenance of difference was considered the most useful choice to make. The colonial experience acted as a catalyst, especially for the perception that the Greeks in the new settlements had of themselves. In fact, they were experimenting with the reproduction of existing models in the motherland, retained partially thanks to relation with their original homeland, which undoubtedly were changed and adapted because of the interaction with the indigenous populations. It's the same phenomenon that characterized thousands of immigrants and refugees that arrive in Sicily, in Italy, not to found new cities, as Greece did in the past, but to escape from wars and have new opportunities to live. The result is the same extraordinary network between different cultural backgrounds and new ways of living. At the end of my work, I wondered what word I would use the most to define the duality between identities, between cultures. It was dicotomia, which derives from the Greek word dicotomia, the division of an entity into 2 parts that are mutually exclusive but complementary. Now I am sure we are all made up of separate but closely related parts, in union and not in contrast. I realized that the extremes in past and present life that can shape our identity, the tools we choose to understand the world, should not be opposed and should not be reconciled, but understood and kept safe, because they are all part of us. They are who we are.